All right, here we go. People are in a panic. The Packer offense has had 2 days of bad showings against the Texans, and it's panic time for Packer fans all across the state. After years and years of a chaotic offense under Mike McCarthy, and the offense being complete chaos, and the only thing keeping it afloat being Aaron Rodgers, and people thinking it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now people are in a panic. And I'm not talking down to anyone. I mean, if you know me, I'm all for being critical. I have no problem with fans being pissed off and upset or whatever it is you want to be at what's happening. Not a problem. And it's not a criticism to say that people are panicking, but people may need to pump the brakes at the moment and just look at the facts here for a moment. Welcome to the program, by the way, Aaron Michaels Show. AaronMichaelsShow@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of the program. At Wisconsin Aaron on Twitter. Look, I'm all for being urgent and upset. All for it, believe me. And I understand why fans are worried, but we got to give this some time. This is a brand new system, brand new coach, and you've got all offensive players trying to get acclimated to it. It's a process. There's a reason that training camp is in place. There's a reason why preseason games are in place. It's to practice, to get better, to help learn a new system, whatever the case may be. I mean, sure, after 12 years of McCarthy and any of the veterans, anyone who's been in McCarthy's system for a long time before this season, after 12 years of McCarthy, Rodgers and any of the veterans can walk in on day one of camp and hit the ground running. Day one, you're right into it, and you just have to shake off the rust. And so we need to remember that the rust still has to be shaken off, regardless of new system or not. They got to get back into football mode, got to get back into football shape, and they have to shake off the rust. And they have to do that, in this case, while also learning a new offense with a new coach. And what's happening, the struggles, there's nothing abnormal about this. And by the way, even Rodgers said it, and he was frustrated. He doesn't like these joint practices that the Packers had the last 2 days. But even he said it. One of the reasons that he didn't like it was because he said after 8 or 9 practices of doing this fun new stuff in this new offensive LaFleur system, it was hard to go to such a vanilla type thing to not give anything away. So they weren't running the true offense, number one. Something to keep in mind. But on a similar note, you look at how teams perform in the preseason as a whole, and it really isn't any kind of preview of what you're going to see when the regular season starts. I mean, when the Lions went 0-16 a few years back, I believe they were undefeated in the preseason that year. And there are teams that don't look good at all in the preseason, teams that sometimes don't win any games, and they look bad, but regular season starts, they're okay, they end up making it to the playoffs. And this is just a practice, and here's the reality of the whole thing. Okay? It's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. Week 1 may not be pretty. I'm talking regular season now. Week 1 may not be pretty. Week 2 may not be pretty. Week 4, 5, 6, 7, they may not be pretty. But at some point, things are going to click. And in my opinion, LaFleur's offense is going to wipe the floor with McCarthy's. Now, I think that Mike McCarthy was a fool, but even if you don't think that, you at least think that his offense was bad and outdated towards the end in the last few years. And for the last few years, Rodgers was able to take that offense and make it effective enough. In fact, he was able to do that in Mike McCarthy's entire career. So even if this were a bad offensive scheme, which I maintain it is not, but even if it was, give Rodgers some time and he'll make it work. Because that's what Rodgers does. He makes it work. And I'm telling you, I mentioned on yesterday's program, the Packers' offense at some point this season is going to click and it'll all come together, and I think it's going to be very effective when it does. Number one, you've got Rodgers. So, boom, right there, you're ahead of most of the NFL just because of that. You got a very good, solid offensive line. No more Jason Spriggs, by the way. We'll get into that in a minute, which is good news. You got Rodgers, so you're ahead of the NFL. You got a good offensive line. Good tight end with Jimmy Graham that you can use in multiple ways. Even Mercedes Lewis behind him. They both have their own strengths. You got two good running backs that'll be utilized in the pass game as well. And other weapons, including Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. The offense will be good, and it'll be versatile, and it'll be fine. There's a lot of different directions that they can move, and a lot of different things that they'll be able to do. And I have to believe that Brian Gutekunst thinks highly. Listen to this. I think Gutekunst thinks highly of the talent that he has on offense, because outside of grabbing an offensive lineman and Graham, he hasn't done much more to touch it with free agency or major picks in the draft. He's won all in on defense. He knows that there's talent on this offense, and they're going to be fine. But we have to give it some time, and it'll be okay, I'm sure. Believe me, folks, if Rodgers could make Mike McCarthy's offense work, he can make any offense work. Just remember, we're in practice in August with a new coach, new offensive scheme. You got to keep that in mind. And I'm not defending bad play at all. Don't get me wrong. If they haven't been good, they have to get better. Absolutely, no doubt. Even LaFleur has said as much. They do have to get better. But try not to get mad or upset. Just, again, I'm not talking anyone down off the ledge. Relax, take it easy. No, if they're not playing well, they have to get better. Absolutely, no doubt. I'm just saying, remember, we're like 2 weeks into this thing, haven't played a preseason game yet. We're talking about a practice in August with a new coach and a new scheme that everyone is learning while still also trying to shake off the rust. Just let it breathe for a minute. Okay? If we're getting into crunch time during the regular season and the offense is still not figuring it out and they're not making strides and improving and looking better and they just don't look like they know what they're doing out there, okay, then let's start going after it, for sure. But remember where we're at. Remember what the current situation is right now. All right, so the Brewers get another win last night. That's 2 in a row for those of you keeping score at home. And next stop, World Series. Right? Not really, but see, we are a good team. Well, yes, we certainly are. Let me remind people, a good team is not in third place in a mediocre division. Good teams aren't 2 games over 500. Anyway, Chase Anderson, 5 2/3 innings, and he pitched pretty well last night. But it was another night and another teeth-pulling victory for the Brewers. And that should tell you something about the team right there. They just can't ever have a nice, comfortable win. No easy wins. Something that I don't understand about yesterday, Christian Yelich was out of the lineup. And oh, by the way, I made a prediction on how the biased Wisconsin sports media was going to spin the Brewers' current position to keep fans happy, to keep everything all happy and smiles. I predicted late last week, I believe it was sometime last week. I think it was later in the week. Anyways, I predicted that the Brewer media would be telling fans to just hold on. Things will be okay. Things are okay. We're right where we need to be. We're where we want to be. We're within striking distance of first place. And soon we'll have the injured starting pitchers back. And when the reinforcements get there, then that's when we get hot and make the big move. So you see, we're really right where we want to be. That was my prediction last week. So, last night on the TV broadcast, Brian Anderson, PR man number 1 for the Brewers, says this. He says, Brent Suter could be returning at some point. You know Woodruff will come back in September. And Chacin should be back in a couple weeks. So if you can just hold water until the reinforcements come, the Brewers like their chances. Okay, so if I may, can we break this down for 1 second? Brent Suter hasn't pitched in almost 2 years. Almost 2 years has not pitched. And you're saying that when he comes back, he's going to help catapult this team into the postseason? Remember when Jimmy Nelson came back from his injury, not pitching for a long time? I mean, guys who are out for that long, even after their minor league rehab starts, don't just waltz in like they never missed a day and never skipped a beat and just come in, hit the ground running, and start going 6 one-hit innings every night for you. So a guy who hasn't pitched in like 2 years, Suter, he's going to come in, help you get to the playoffs? And Chacin, hello. The Brewers were horrible when Chacin was healthy. He's having a terrible year. I don't think he's won a game since April or early May. He's 3-10 with a 5.79 ERA. And he's going to be the hero? He, along with Suter, are going to help you get into the playoffs? Are you kidding me? You can't actually be thinking this stuff or saying this stuff with a straight face. A guy who hasn't pitched in almost 2 years, and a 3-10 pitcher with a 5.79 ERA is 2 out of the 3 reinforcements that you're eagerly waiting to return so that you can right the ship. That is asinine. That's ridiculous. And, you know, people, a lot of Brewer fans hear this stuff, and they buy this stuff, and they love it. All this is doing is filling these poor saps' heads who think the Brewers are great no matter what. It's just filling their heads with a bunch of nonsense that has no basis in reality, and it's not going to fix anything. Let us go back, and we can check out at the end of the season and see who is right about this. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. And welcome back. The Aaron Michael Show. Not biased, not afraid. So I was going to mention this before I got off into the Brewer media insanity. Christian Yelich out of the lineup last night. Counsel said that it was a proactive measure to protect the back problems that Yelich has had, so I get that part of it. But he also evidently isn't actually hurt. As Counsel said, he could have came in off the bench. I didn't say for sure whether or not Yelich was going to play tonight. They also have an off day tomorrow. It could give him 3 off days in a row. And if he does play tonight, it at least gives him 2 out of 3 days off. But I get the back injury part of it. But also at the same time, he's not actually hurt. So to me, this really hurts to sit a guy when your offense has already been in a horrible, horrible slump. And the previous night, Yelich gets 4 hits, including 2 home runs, and then he's on the bench the following night. I know you're trying to keep the guys back healthy, but still, you're at a risk of letting the division slip away from you. You're 1 game out of the wild card right now. You're in danger of letting that slip away from you if you're not winning these games with an offense that's been struggling horribly. And Yelich, the night before, basically was provided you with your offense. I mean, it wasn't like the Brewers last night without Yelich got a great, powerful showing. But you're risking stuff slipping away from you here, and every game you lose at this point of the season, you get closer and closer to not getting the opportunity to win the division, which I'm not worried about them doing anyway. I don't think they will. But you also inch further and further away from the wild card. So the concept made sense. I'm not a fan of the timing, though, for sitting Yelich. Also, Lorenzo Cain going to be day to day after taking a foul ball off his kneecap in the first inning last night. That didn't look fun. He seems pretty tough, though. Maybe he'll be back in the lineup tonight. He just hasn't gotten it going this year. I mean, he's got... the defense has been fine. The defense is always great with him. It doesn't look like he's lost any steps out there, but the thumb injuries... I know his knees have been banged up as well. Just offensively, he hasn't been able to get it going. I thought after the All-Star break, he looked pretty good. You know, he had that break that week to rest his injured thumb, and he looked good after that, and he was hitting the ball hard, and he still is hitting the ball harder right now than he had been in the first half of the season, but those balls in play, his batting average on balls in play this year is way down from what it was last year. And on the first half of the season, he wasn't hitting it that hard, but he is hitting it hard here in the second half, and maybe he's going into some bad luck. I don't know. But if the Brewers do want to make a run, which to me again I think that's far-fetched. I think it's far-fetched. I mean, the Brewers are only one game out of the wild card right now. I think it's far-fetched to think that they're going to make it in that, again, because I don't think that the Brewers are a good team. And the reason I don't think they're a good team is because they're not a good team. Anyway, Pat Albers got the save last night, so that was fun. Brewers council said it was going to be a bullpen day today, and it indeed is. Jake Pomeranz is going to get the start. So he's a guy who was a starter earlier in the season, so I assume they're going to take him, try to ride him as deep as they can into the game, whether that be 2 innings or 6 innings. I think they'll try to take him as deep as they can. And, I mean, obviously the further he can go, the better off it is going to be. All right, so on to the fun stuff. Packers tomorrow open the preseason. Can't wait for that. Against the Texans, 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So on the official Aaron Michael Twitter page, that's at Wisconsin Aaron, I did post a poll question. Who do you want as the Packers backup quarterback? You have the options of the guys who are on the team: DeShone Kizer, Tim Boyle, Manny Wilkins, or Mr. Outside Hire. Right now, Tim Boyle is running away with it. You got 23 hours left to vote, but Tim Boyle, 53% of the vote. DeShone Kizer and Mr. Outside Hire both have 17%. Manny Wilkins at 13%. But I cannot wait until the preseason opens tomorrow night. Looking forward to this season way more than I have any season for probably the last 8 or 9 years. Can't wait for tomorrow night, even though it is only the preseason. John Kuhn. I got a few more things here on Jimmy Graham. Mentioned him yesterday, and we actually had a pretty decent segment talking about him. But John Kuhn, who's now working for Packers.com, says that Graham has looked really impressive so far in camp. We talked yesterday about that, making my prediction that he will be the Packers' big comeback player of the year this season, maybe through the whole NFL. New system, most importantly, out of McCarthy's tutelage. Jimmy Graham, who's had some coaches throughout his career, a variety of coaches, was asked what LaFleur's offense was like, what LaFleur was like as a coach. And he said it's a mix of Sean Payton and Pete Carroll. Says that LaFleur doesn't let people get away with even little mistakes, that he'll call you up when call you out when you mess up, whether you're young or old. And one thing that I mentioned yesterday, and I didn't end up expanding much on it, I really like the mix that the Packers have here. A mix of young talent, older veterans. Not just the mix, but also the fact that the older guys are helping teach the young guys. And there's some good leadership on this team. I've heard a lot of stories about it in different areas as well. You got Tremont Williams mentoring second-year defensive back Tony Brown. Jimmy Graham, Mercedes Lewis mentoring Robert Tonyan. A couple of guys working with Rashawn Gary. Zadarius Smith has been working with him. Even David Bakhtiari giving advice to Gary about how to go against and beat good offensive linemen. Bakhtiari would know. I like that mix. There's some really good, strong, solid leadership on this team. And I remember that about the 2010 team that won the Super Bowl. I remember having a conversation about that with my dad before that season started, how they had some really good veteran players on that defense at the time, and how their leadership was really good and really in place. And that really stood out to me, and I remember that. And they ended up going and winning the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not predicting that the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this season, but I do think that they're going to make the playoffs. And I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people, even Packer fans. And I think they're going to have a big season. And I think a big part of that is going to be the leadership that they have in place. Because they've got it on offense and on defense. The Packers have moved on from Jason Spriggs, second-round pick from 2016, who, by the way, Ted Thompson moved up to get. Thank you once again, Ted. So, again, Brian Gutekunst is ridding the team at a rapid pace of Ted's guys. And believe me, this is a good thing. We're going to take a quick break. Matt LaFleur is still harping on something that he has been throughout camp, evidently hasn't been fixed yet. We'll get to that and more straight ahead. Aaron Michael Show on a Wednesday, the day before the preseason opener, and we're all set and geared up, ready to go for that. AaronMichaelShow@gmail.com if you want to email the program, at Wisconsin Aaron on Twitter as well. Okay, Matt LaFleur is still not happy with the pace of play, the effort, or the crispness of the Packers in camp and practice so far. Here's what he had to say after the second joint practice. He says, the only thing I want to stress to our guys is it takes no talent to give effort and to have a sense of urgency. We keep hearing that. Sense of urgency, sense of urgency, That is something that he's fighting the culture that McCarthy built over 12 years, and the culture that Thompson helped build, and the culture that has been allowed in that locker room for years. It's a culture of complacency. All, I may add, under the watch of Mark Murphy, who is still there. But that's a different story for another day. But LaFleur says, the only thing I want to stress to our guys is it takes no talent to give effort and to have a sense of urgency, and we've got to do a better job of that. And then he also said that it starts with the coaching. You know, I'm really glad that LaFleur has this high standard that he's so set on holding his players to. I like that a lot. Okay, before we wrap it up here, some other news and notes from Packers training camp and their second joint practice yesterday. You know, Packer pass rush has been really good. Especially with Zadarius Smith, but Gary has been good, and they just seem to have a lot of depth at different positions that involve pass rush, and that's something that they obviously need more of because Nick Perry wasn't doing anything essentially. Matthews was getting some numbers, same with Daniels, but how many were actually impact plays between those two? I would say hardly any. I don't think either one of them are going to be missed. Also, Jay Sternberger, who was the one who got hit the other day by Lonnie Johnson Jr. of the Texans. He was out of practice yesterday, and he is being evaluated, Sternberger is, for a concussion. Also got a jaw injury. And I would be very curious to be watching the game closely tomorrow night to see how long it takes before somebody from the Packers takes a shot at Lonnie Johnson Jr. I mean, I feel like it must be coming. I really do, because to me, this Packers team doesn't seem to have the personality to just let something like that go without going back out after him. And I think at some point tomorrow night, we're probably going to see a fight, and it's going to involve Lonnie Johnson Jr., which I'm good with. I'm good with the joint practices. Aaron Rodgers didn't like him. Says it's not... He said he's good with not doing them anymore. And LaFleur seemed to like and value the joint practices. So I don't think they're quite seeing eye to eye on that issue. But I like it. I mean, it's been years and years since the Packers had one, so it's something that Aaron Rodgers isn't used to. I mean, he's never had one in his tenure there. It's something that actually most players on the Packer roster, especially if they've been around for their entire career, they're not used to it. But it's something that other teams do, and I like it. I like the idea. Yeah, I also don't mind the fights. As I said yesterday, it builds team chemistry. So while you don't want to see anyone getting hurt and having your rookie draft pick Sternberger out with possibly a concussion and an injured jaw, That's a high price to pay. That's too high of a price, and it's not any good. Which is why someone from the Packers has to go after this Johnson Jr. fella. But the fighting, showing that you have your teammates back, doing that doesn't hurt anything, and it helps build team chemistry. So I'm cool with that. But this is what Rodgers said about the joint practices. He says, "I'm glad it's over, so we can get on to the rest of camp." And then he also said, "I wouldn't mind if they don't do it again for another 14 years." So I take it he's not a fan. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be. He's not in charge anyway, but he doesn't have to like it. But I'm glad it's something that they did, and I hope it's something that they continue to do in years to come. This day in history, August 7th, 2007, Barry Bonds hits career home run number 756, passing Hank Aaron for the most all time. Steroids are a wonderful thing. Jimmy Graham, article on NFL.com. This is something that I wanted to get to before we wrap up on today's program. NFL.com. Now, this was fun. Remember, I told you I had some stuff on Graham, and we talked about him yesterday, talked about how ineffective he was on the Packer offense. NFL.com, Packers tight end Jimmy Graham. Everybody thinks I'm old. Article written by Kevin Patra, I don't know. Around the NFL writer. Says Jimmy Graham hasn't been shy about disappointing in his first season in Green Bay. Former All-Pro. Put up just 55 receptions for 636 yards and only 2 touchdowns. Playing with Aaron Rodgers, those numbers are pedestrian for a player of Graham's ilk. Last year's disappointment led to the belief that Graham's athleticism has finally dropped off. See, this poor guy. I tell you, folks, he plays in 1 year of Mike McCarthy's system, and everyone thinks he's old and washed up. This is what the article says. Last year's disappointment led to the belief that Graham's athleticism has finally dropped off, and he's not a difference-making pass catcher any longer. I was predicting this before the season started. You get this guy, you put him into McCarthy's offense, his career is going to go to crap, and lo and behold, here we are a year later. Oh, God, he's washed up, isn't he? Here's some quotes. Graham says, "When I get those opportunities, I have to show him that I'm the biggest, fastest thing out there." Wait. No. Here was something I wanted to point out. I already read this. I'm going to read it again. Last year's disappointment led to the belief that Graham's athleticism has finally dropped off, and he's not a difference-making pass catcher any longer. Entering 2019, Graham is out to prove those takes are malarkey. He knows it. He knows why he didn't have a good season last year. He's not going to come out and say, well, McCarthy is a jackass, so, I'll be better this year. He's not going to say that, but he knows. He knows why he didn't have a good season. Says, when I get those opportunities, I have to show him that I'm the biggest, fastest thing out there. I have to go up and get grabs for him, Graham said. Be Jason Wilde of the Wisconsin State Journal. So I've been focused, and I'm ready to get this thing started, obviously. We have 4 more weeks here. But I'm as fired up as I've ever been to go and shut a lot of people up. And that's because he knows he can, because he knows he's not washed up. Anyone who knew the truth about McCarthy and his pathetic, terrible offense knows that Graham's not washed up. He just wasn't being used. Just like Eddie Lacy was an elite running back, but they just didn't use him. Just like Aaron Jones was on his way to having his career dumpster dive because McCarthy would sit him on the bench for 2 quarters at a time. This is what happens when you go play in McCarthy's offense. Your career goes to die. Unless you're a number 1 receiver or unless you're Aaron Rodgers, who's too damn good to let that happen to him. But here's the key line in the article. It says the 32-year-old believes Matt LaFleur's offense in Green Bay will provide him more opportunities than he garnered last year. Bingo! It will give him more opportunities than he garnered last year. He was not used in Mike McCarthy's offense. And that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been trying to tell people. That's why. And I'm not just coming out and saying this to bash Mike McCarthy, though I do thoroughly enjoy doing that. What I'm doing is I'm telling people to just, hey, be optimistic about this season, because the bad, scary guy, McCarthy, he's gone. And you have LaFleur. And you have a competent offense with a head coach who I'm going to assume has a few functioning brain cells, and he runs his offense as such. And it's going to be better. I'm telling you, it's going to be better. So you don't have to believe me. Wait and see. Wait and see. That's all I'll tell you. Wait and see. We'll be back tomorrow. Aaron Michaels Show.